Recent trade actions between the U.S. and Canada spark ripple effects across North America. Will new tariffs and energy threats from Canada make Americans pay more for electricity, groceries, and even risk losing jobs? In 2018, the U.S. imposed tariffs of 25% on Canadian steel and 10% on aluminum, sparking immediate backlash from Canadian producers. According to CNBC, these tariffs cost the Canadian metal industry over $300 million in the first 6 months and triggered retaliatory duties on U.S. exports. While there is no recent confirmed move to 50% tariffs, the trade tension remains high, leading to canceled contracts and economic strain across borders. The state of Ontario, Canada's industrial hub, warned that continued tariff disputes could threaten energy exports to U.S. border states. The American Public Power Association notes that states like Michigan, New York, and Ohio receive nearly 20% of their imported electricity from Canada. A disruption could raise electricity bills for millions of residents and industries by up to 15%. Everyday Americans may also see prices rise on aluminum-based goods, from soda cans to cars, as manufacturers face higher raw material costs. Ontario, responsible for 38% of Canada's GDP, is accelerating efforts to reduce reliance on the U.S. by investing in domestic technology and energy production. CBC reports that Ontario's government is prioritizing local businesses for major infrastructure projects and exploring new partnerships with Asian suppliers. For U.S. businesses, this pivot means significant losses. The U.S. exported over $69 billion in services to Canada in 2023. If bidding on public projects becomes restricted, American firms in engineering, IT, and construction could see contract volumes drop sharply. This loss would be felt most in regions that traditionally rely on cross-border business and government contracts. In late 2024, Canada finalized a free trade agreement with Indonesia under the SEIPA framework, opening broader access to key materials for electric vehicle batteries. The Canadian government also pledged over 2.3 billion Canadian dollars, about 1.7 billion US dollars, for its Indo-Pacific strategy, focusing on reducing dependence on US ports. As global supply chains adjust, American logistics firms face heightened competition and fewer shipments. According to UNCTAD, foreign direct investment in Canada rose by 5% in 2023, while FDI in the U.S. declined by 3%. These changes pressure American exporters and investors, driving up import prices for U.S. consumers and encouraging companies to seek new markets abroad, potentially resulting in fewer job opportunities in the logistics and trade sectors. Freight disruptions have hit the U.S. hard. In 2023, blank sailings accounted for about 20% of trans-Pacific shipping routes, a historical high. According to Drury, in early 2024, UPS announced cuts of 12,000 jobs due to lower package volumes, while FedEx reported significant workforce reductions as well. The ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach saw a 15% decrease in container throughput in the first quarter of 2024. For American families, the result is empty shelves and higher prices at supermarkets and home improvement stores. The combination of supply shortages and inflation means that everyday goods, from electronics to canned food, are not only more expensive, but also harder to find. Households across the country are feeling the strain as disruptions to the supply chain cascade through the entire economy. Container and car shipments into U.S. ports are facing cancellations and delays, stirring concern for consumers and workers. Could this be the early sign of a broader U.S. supply crisis? Container carriers have scrapped up to 30% of trans-Pacific sailings, cutting 20% of capacity to West Coast ports in April and 24% in early May. Major hubs, Los Angeles, Long Beach, Oakland, saw vessel arrivals drop nearly 50%, from about 12 ships to just 6 per day. Globally, carriers withdrew capacity, equivalent to 1.3 million 40-foot containers, annually, equal to 578,115 TEU. Consumers across the U.S. will notice more empty shelves in major stores, as shipments of popular products are delayed or even canceled. This is especially concerning for families waiting for essential appliances or seasonal goods. Businesses, too, are struggling to maintain normal inventory, forcing some to increase prices to cover rising costs. The logistics industry, already strained, sees hundreds of port workers and truck drivers forced to accept fewer shifts, and many risk being temporarily laid off. For communities dependent on port activity, the slowdown leads to reduced local business, threatening restaurants, shops, and service providers who rely on daily port operations for a stable income. An estimated 37,000 vehicles, including Audi and VW models, remain stranded at U.S. ports since April 2nd, halted by a newly imposed 25% U.S. import tariff. Automakers like GM have paused shipments and are redirecting vehicles into bonded yards to avoid tariffs. Customers looking to purchase new vehicles face long waits or are pushed to buy older models at a premium. The shortage is not limited to luxury brands. Mainstream dealerships also struggle to receive regular inventory, making it harder for families to access affordable transportation. Price increases may push some buyers out of the market altogether. For dealership employees, uncertainty grows as managers cut back hours or postpone new hires. Those working in car transport, detailing, or parts supply feel the ripple effect. Facing shrinking paychecks, the lack of fresh stock could even force some local dealerships to close, impacting local economies and causing job losses beyond the auto industry. Beyond containers and cars, bulk goods and agricultural exports have been blocked. U.S. soybean shipments to China plunged 41% year-on-year in Q1 2025. Brazil now supplies around 70% of China's soybeans, while U.S. share dropped to 28% in 2022/2023. Without a deeper trade deal, U.S. exports may shrink to 1.5 billion bushels, down from 1.865 billion, risking price declines to $9 per bushel. Higher costs for food, electronics, and auto parts. Businesses pay extra for storage or cancel orders altogether. Logistics slowdowns hurt workers' incomes in retail, trucking, and warehousing. Despite a 90-day tariff truce, reducing U.S. duties on Chinese imports to 30% from 145%, blank sailings remain high, up to 28% cancellations, and ports stay quiet. No definitive relief or federal plan appears, and regional leaders are pressing for action. Household budgets tighten as prices rise. Middle-class families may cut spending further. Economic recovery slows, reducing room for local support programs and job creation. America's auto industry is facing an unprecedented challenge as new car inventories hit record highs and consumers walk away from new vehicles. With dealerships struggling and car prices soaring, could this crisis permanently change how Americans think about car ownership? As of May 2020, 2025, U.S. new vehicle inventory has surged to over 2.84 million units, with an average 80-day supply for EVs, SUVs, and luxury models. It exceeds 100 days. Dealerships in Texas, Arizona, and Michigan are cutting staff, downsizing, or seeking foreign buyers, signaling a major industry shift. The sudden glut of unsold cars has left hundreds of thousands of dealership employees at risk of losing their jobs. Local communities are seeing a sharp drop in tax revenue and economic activity, putting public services and small businesses in jeopardy. For many towns that rely on auto sales as their economic lifeblood, this downturn means real hardship for families, workers, and local governments who are struggling to adapt to the new reality. In 2025, the average new pickup costs $54,000, up from $38,000 just 6 years ago. Auto loan rates now average nearly 10%, with some buyers paying 15 to 22% due to imperfect credit. A $24,000 loan on a $32,000 car can mean $650 monthly payments, more than many mortgages. As a result, Americans are keeping older vehicles, often with over 200,000 miles, to avoid unsustainable debt. With soaring prices and sky-high loan rates, millions of Americans are forced to drive aging, high-mileage cars. This trend brings more breakdowns, higher repair bills, and growing safety concerns. The stress of mounting financial pressure is eroding consumer confidence, especially among the middle class, who now feel shut out of the dream of new car ownership. Electric vehicles and luxury SUVs now comprise a growing share of the over 750,000 vehicles unsold for more than 100 days. Despite EV price cuts of up to 50%, buyers remain scarce. As they sit unused, batteries degrade, tires crack, and paint fades, turning them into liabilities for dealers and automakers. Major automakers like Ford, GM, and Stellantis have cut production by 35 to 40%, causing tens of thousands of layoffs. The rapid depreciation of new technology has shaken public trust in electric vehicles. Many Americans are now hesitant to embrace modern cars, fearing their investment will quickly lose value. The dream of a green automotive future feels more distant, while the risk of job loss in manufacturing communities has grown. As car makers cut orders, parts factories in Ohio, Michigan, and Tennessee are shutting down. Over 50,000 auto jobs have been lost in just 6 months, per Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal. The ripple effects reach banks, pension funds, credit unions, and school budgets. Entire communities, from teachers to grocery store owners, are being swept up in the crisis. As the auto industry's decline ripples through the local economy, small towns are losing their industrial identity and facing the prospect of long-term poverty. Job losses are undermining the stability of families and neighborhoods. Canada is witnessing a sweeping economic boycott of U.S. products, streaming services, and tourism. Could this boycott cost thousands of American jobs and reshape cross-border relations forever? Since early February 2025, over 85% of Canadians are avoiding American goods, 48% replacing as many as possible, and 37% when price and quality match, according to an Angus Reid survey. Quebec now labels U.S. products, bans American alcohol in government stores, and even posts Made in Canada tags alongside warnings. This surge in anti-U.S. sentiment isn't just a minor dip. Brown-Forman's CEO called the removal of Jack Daniel's worse than tariffs, noting Canada accounts for 1% of its sales, yet shelf space was cleared regardless. The U.S. Travel Association warns even a 10% drop in Canadian visits could cost 140,000 U.S. jobs and $2.1 billion in spending. Farmers and food exporters may see a prolonged downturn in demand north of the border. Fast food staples, McDonald's, Starbucks, KFC, and e-commerce giant Amazon Canada are feeling the pinch. A research corporate poll shows 78% plan to buy more Canadian, 59% will boycott U.S. products, and 41% are reducing Amazon usage. McDonald's U.S. comparable sales fell 0.7% in Q2, while global sales slid 1%, its first global decline since 2020. With 41% of Canadians reducing Amazon usage, U.S. e-commerce jobs, from warehousing in Ohio to local courier positions, face layoffs. Lower retail revenue also risks reducing small business partnerships and service contracts tied to these chains, from packaging to local logistics. In Quebec, roughly 36% of residents have canceled or plan to cancel subscriptions to Netflix, Disney+, or Spotify. Social posts like "I love Canada more than I love Spotify" are trending. Quebec's 36% cancellation rate includes major platforms like Netflix and Disney+, hitting U.S. content planners hard. Meanwhile, North American cord-cutting trends already show 27% planning to drop traditional services by Q2 2023. Added pressures could force U.S. studios to scale back production, stall series renewals, and impact thousands of U.S.-based writers, crew, and performers reliant on Canadian subscriber revenue. Canada-U.S. cross-border. Bookings dropped 71 to 76% in March 2025 compared to 2024. Airlines cut 320,000 seats on Canada routes. Duty-free shops report 40 to 50% slump from January to April. Some outlets say business has plunged 80%, prompting staff layoffs. Financial Times warns Florida, Arizona, and Nevada may lose 9 to 12 billion US dollars. February border crossings fell 23%, and air travel bookings dropped 71 to 76% in March 2025. The U.S. Travel Association forecasts 140,000 job losses and $2.1 billion in spending cuts, from just a 10% decline. Regions like Florida rely heavily on Canadian tourism. Florida saw 3.3 million Canadian visitors in 2024, contributing $600 million to Fort Lauderdale alone. Cuts in airline schedules and duty-free layoffs are rippling through local economies. International visits to the U.S. have plunged, triggering billions in economic losses and warning signs for the summer season. Could easing entry rules and marketing campaigns reverse the trend? International arrivals to the U.S. dropped 14% in March 2025 compared to March 2024. Canada down 26% via land and 14% via air. Western Europe down 17%. South America down 10%. This contraction follows tougher visa screenings and stricter border enforcement. This slump hits U.S. tourism businesses hard, especially in New York, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, leading to reduced bookings in hotels, restaurants, car rentals, and theme parks. Seasonal layoffs and slower summer hiring are already being felt in local economies that rely on foreign visitors. Lower foot traffic also means shops and small businesses on main streets struggle to meet monthly targets. And local tour operators may need to cut hours or staff. Some communities, particularly those reliant on tourism, are experiencing a downturn in neighborhood events, festivals, and local sponsorships, further reducing the vibrancy of public life. Travel advisories from Germany, Japan, and Australia now reference invasive phone checks, detailed interviews, and even deportation risks, raising alarm among potential tourists. Meanwhile, cross-border traffic from Canada has dropped between 20 and 35%, and Canadian airlines have trimmed routes due to sagging demand. Fear of intrusive border measures reduces international tourism, infrastructure usage, and revenue. U.S. service and transport workers face fewer shifts. Communities near border crossings see slower commercial activity. Businesses dependent on tourism. Forecasting face revenue and staffing uncertainty. Local restaurants and taxi drivers, who rely heavily on the spending of international guests, are seeing fewer tips and longer idle hours. Cultural venues and event organizers, hoping for a post-pandemic revival, now contend with fewer bookings and less diverse audiences, limiting community engagement and potential growth. The World Travel and Tourism Council projects a $12.5 billion drop in international visitor spending in 2025, from $181 billion in 2024 to just under $169 billion. Oxford Economics forecasts an 8.7% decline in arrivals, translating to around $8.5 billion in lost tourism revenue. Tourism Economics warns that Canadian travel could cut $2 to $6 billion and about 14,000 U.S. jobs. Local tax revenue and public service funding suffer as tourism-generated income shrinks. School budgets, road maintenance, and public transportation systems may face cutbacks or tax hikes to compensate. Job losses in tourism sectors ripple into related industries like retail and hospitality. States like California and Florida, along with major cities, have launched marketing campaigns promoting a welcoming U.S. image and travel discounts. Airlines and hotels are offering bundled deals to attract early summer bookings. While still emerging, these initiatives aim to stem the downturn. If successful, these efforts could fuel summer travel, helping tourism-dependent regions rebound in jobs and revenue. If delayed or weak, dependence on summer tourism may see continued unemployment, prompting budget shortfalls and possible reductions in public services. U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports and rising trade tensions are disrupting domestic industries and fraying supply chains. Why are U.S. imports plunging despite high tariffs? And why aren't tariffs saving industries while prices keep rising? U.S. slapped a sweeping 145% tariff on Chinese steel, aluminum, and components. Yet, imports still plunged 28.5% in May, year on year, to 2.18 million TEUs, the steepest drop since the pandemic. Nearly every West Coast port saw declines, Long Beach down 31.6%, and Los Angeles down 29.9%. Shipping lines have cut at least 6 Asia to U.S. routes, as warehouses brace for emptier containers. Shelf shortages in electronics and home goods could hit within 5 to 7 weeks, as inventory dries up. Import costs have surged. U.S. steel and aluminum duties add over $100 billion annually, inflating household expenses. A Reuters Ipsos poll finds 73% of Americans expect higher prices in the next 6 months. Economic strains are already pushing consumer sentiment to near 3-year lows. From January to April 2025, the Bloomberg Dollar Index tumbled from 105 to under 95, losing roughly 10%. Yet analysts warn this hasn't lifted U.S. manufacturing. A Morgan Stanley Moody's alert points to stagflation risks if industry remains fragile. With inflation sticky, essentials cost more. U.S. CPI hit the 2.3 to 2.5% range, and lenders are hiking rates. Weak dollar didn't stimulate exports meaningfully, while households face higher mortgage costs and rent. A Fed beige book notes uneven growth and pressure on input prices across regions. Consumer confidence remains shaky, especially among ages 30 to 44, with 60 to 70% planning to cut spending or stockpile. Ford halted production at its Chicago plant in May due to lack of Chinese rare earth magnets. GM, Stellantis, and Toyota are urging federal action to avoid deep supply chain collapse. Fewer new vehicles hit showrooms, pushing used car prices up 4.9% in April, per Manheim Index at 208.2. Listings show median used sedan prices rose by $2,500 year over year. Maintenance costs jump as parts become scarce, with dealers alerting roughly 30% increase in magnet-dependent repairs. Communities near auto plants worry about layoffs as output holds steady or declines. Meanwhile, Beijing has cut interest rates and supported its currency, while keeping exports stable. In contrast, U.S. tariffs have stoked supply interruptions. Without shifting global trade balance, the U.S. sees its dollar debilitate and industrial employment unravel. Auto sector job losses may rise. As factories scale back, the CBO estimated 500,000 U.S. jobs lost, and households pay an extra $4,000 annually due to tariffs. Import taxes are embedded in everyday goods. Retail giants like Walmart report 8% price hikes on pet food and essentials. Roughly $3,800 per household is expected to be absorbed this year. In 2025, Trump's shifts from tariff threats to diplomatic praise are colliding with China's rare earth squeeze, hitting American industries hard. Could Trump's sudden diplomatic pivot be the real reason behind widespread factory shutdowns and soaring inflation in the U.S.? In early 2025, President Trump vowed to make China kneel under new 145% reciprocal tariffs, aiming to bring back lost jobs and shrink a $1.2 trillion trade deficit. By June, he praised a call with Xi Jinping as very good, despite no formal agreement, sparking criticism that it's false victory spin. The abrupt tone shift rattles investors, businesses, and workers. A Goldman Sachs survey revealed 77% of small businesses cite policy uncertainty as their top concern. That uncertainty leads 36% to report direct harm and 38% to expected. Predictable policy is the foundation of planning. Its absence weakens strategic investment, erodes economic confidence, and may dampen GDP growth as firms pause hiring and expansion. In April, China banned exports of key rare earth elements and magnets, controlling 70% of global mining and over 90% of refining. Permits for shipments to the U.S. have fallen sharply as Beijing intensifies security licensing. This chokehold halts electric vehicle, aerospace, and semiconductor production. Factory delays ripple through supply chains, raising costs by up to 15% in auto assembly and electronics. Businesses are stockpiling components. Half of Fed districts cite supply chain disruptions in surveys. With rising manufacturing costs, consumers face higher prices and less stable product availability, while strategic dependencies undermine U.S. tech sovereignty. Ford and major defense firms halted production due to lack of rare earth magnets, essential for motors, brakes, missiles, and radars. Analysts warn Pentagon readiness could be compromised not by combat, but by material shortage. The Chicago Ford plant alone paused for weeks, impacting workers and vendors. Bloomberg reports a temporary shutter of one factory, halting production lines. Layoffs ripple through supplier networks. Defense delays threaten jobs for engineers and technicians. Public trust in manufacturing and military readiness weakens, feeding anxiety over the government's ability to secure critical infrastructure and national defense. Tariffs and rare earth disruption pushed U.S. shipping and input costs up around 15 to 20%, squeezing small retailers, toy, electronics, and hardware stores in Iowa and Ohio report rising inventory costs, canceled orders, and closures. Small business owners, representing 1/3 of U.S. imports, report duties as high as 161%, shrinking margins. Many are drawing on personal savings or cutting staff to stay afloat. Consumers face fewer local shopping options, higher prices, and delayed orders. As small business closures rise, local employment dips, impacting community economies and increasing reliance on social safety nets.